What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode number 9, Millionaire Voices. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing the one and only Peter Marcus from the UK, who now lives in the United States, but his journey evolved when he became a successful entrepreneur by creating the term flat screen TV, and he then went off to sell the IP for millions of dollars. Today in our episode, we talk about his business journey of how he became a coach and what principles he believes makes a great business owner and a leader in any business. So tune on in today to hear Peter Marcus's 70 plus years of wisdom. All right, Peter. Peter, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Danny. It's a pleasure. When you connected with me, I just went, wow, I'm loving this opportunity.
That's that good energy, Peter. Peter and I, we actually connected in business, and when I was focusing on building a company, he came in to coach me and our executive team. So I've had the pleasure of working with Peter, and Peter, I learned a lot from you. So this show is something that I really wanted to create to inspire people, educate people, and show people the realness and the lessons from successful entrepreneurs that run at a high performance, and business owners and people just in life. And I view you as one of those people. So people don't understand the depths of your story. So I want to dig in and start really, where are you from?
Well, I was born in Manchester in the north of England. I'm a post-war kid, just post-war, Second World War, that is, not more recently. So I've been around a long time and grew up into what was left of a war-torn kind of nation. And that's really where I spent my first 15 years, just living on the streets that I grew up on were bombed streets and wrecked, and there wasn't a lot going on, but we learned to make our own ideas and come forward. But Manchester itself has got a massive history. It really was the foundational kind of city for what became known as the Industrial Revolution. Manchester had the first ship canal. It had the first of the steam-powered engines. It had the first of the cotton manufacturing facilities in the UK, and also developed the origin of the computer as we know it today.
Wow. It's so fascinating to meet
Yeah.
people. When I say yesterday, last episode, I spoke to Jack DeLosa, who's a very successful entrepreneur and has an institute in Australia. And back to your story, you grew up in this type of generation. What years are you talking about right now?
I was born in 1945, so that makes me 75. I'll just cut to the chase here. It makes it much easier. And by the time it was 1950, I went to school and spent the next kind of 10 years, I guess. That was about it in my education for the future.
Now, before we start talking about all the wise wisdom you've been able to accumulate over the years, and I want to know a little bit more of, when did your mindset become the growth mindset where you wanted to become so-called successful in your childhood?
Well, I was very lucky because I grew up into a generation of like rock and roll and freedom. We fought for our freedom, but rock and roll really drove us through. As well as that, growing up in Manchester, it's the center really of football, of soccer, as we call it over here, and had two professional teams. And my dream was either to be, well, the choices, I guess, and dream, either to be a professional soccer player or a professional rock and roll musician, or to do something different. I had no idea of anything different other than that. But I knew that I wasn't destined to be a doctor or a lawyer. So the creative parts of me, I guess, started I think the first kind of testing I did of this was in trying to connect one electric wire to an outlet and another electric wire to another outlet and getting kicked across the room. So that was my first kind of foray.
And experimenting and curiosity got you in some trouble. But so with that, I guess you're fascinated by certain things, is what I'm getting out of that, and it was starting to inspire you. So did you go to a university?
No, I didn't. I left school at 15. I'd actually been quite ill as a kid. When I was 11, I got a disease from a strep throat that became known as rheumatic fever. And then for the next 2 years, between 11 and 13, I was either in hospital or out of school. So when I went back to school at 13, I was still like a 10-year-old and unable to connect up. So the schools in those days were really not able to care for anybody. And I was lucky. I'd moved into what was a newly built school. So they sent me off to work with the gardeners that were putting the landscaping in there. And I spent a lot of my days just working with the gardeners. And it taught me so much. I think that was really the foundational part of me. It gave me an opportunity to find something that I was able to do and not something that somebody else was doing. And I think that's really a very important category.
Wow, it really shows a resilience there, and also you were so young that you didn't really harp on it. You kind of just pushed through it. It sounded like.
Yeah.
And really, a lot of
Yeah.
people fall down. I've seen, and they harp on it. You kind of just
Mhm.
got back up after that time period in your life. So, you're 16 years old. You're kind of getting a feel for the real world per se. What was the next Peter Marcus move? We want to know.
Okay, so 16 years old, of course, we were in a period of, like I said, of I don't want to say sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but really, I mean, that was the period of time that this was really foundational. 1960, 1961, these were the days of it, and there wasn't a lot else to do. There was still very few people had cars. I think we had by then probably, I think I might have known a couple of friends that had cars. I certainly didn't have one. But I started to look around at things I wanted to do, and I decided that I wanted to be a photographer. And I was lucky. I had an uncle who was a photographer and fairly well known. And so I actually picked up a camera and I got myself my first summer job working as a photographer. And I spent the next 2 summers doing exactly that, working, on the tourist towns. I mean, just snapping people, taking pictures, doing that kind of stuff. It actually helped me because it gave me a lot of time to work in the pubs as well and the bars, taking photographs. And, and of course, as a 17, 18-year-old, and, I was in that perfect age group to really involve myself heavily in the bright, shiny objects that were there.
You're so wise that you're doing such a great job not telling us the details, but you're telling us the details. And I can guess it was that cliche sex, drugs, and alcohol and rock and roll type era. And it also probably got you to see life quickly, of like all the pleasures of it, per se, and also realizing what path you want to take. So
Yeah.
now you become a man, 21 years old, and when did you start that next turbo in your life?
At 21, it's great that you came to me at 21 because I met somebody during those years and we stayed friends, and he had an idea to develop a product, and I really loved the idea. I really loved that I could do something, do something that nobody else had done. And together we worked on his project, and it was the first sea scooter. Now, a sea scooter today, of course, everybody drives them around the ocean and they spray out a lot of water from the back. But we took the engine from an old Lambretta scooter and actually put it in and built a fiberglass shell around it. And we actually made a double page spread in the biggest of the daily newspapers in the UK at that time. We failed within a couple of years because we could make one, but then people wanted them. And that's when we really found out we couldn't do that. But it had really it had brought back to me this want and desire for me to do something that was creative. And that was the period. I was 21. By the time I was 23, we'd kind of drifted apart. And I was looking around for something else to do. I actually got married at 24, and at 25 had my first child, or my wife had our first child, I should say. And times were still pretty tough in the UK, and certainly for me, because I really hadn't found myself at that time.
So when was the time that you started to actually, like you said, see the past, see the light, see who you were, and that next level?
Yeah, 25, 26, met up with another couple of guys, a couple of London, I'm still in Manchester, a couple of fellows from London, got friendly with them. And we started trading used and worn Levi's jeans. And we were buying them from a group over here in the US called Jean Machine. And we were kind of reselling them and doing them. And then we started manufacturing our own line of clothing and jeans primarily. And I then took our business offshore. We became kind of, a brand. We were really one of the early brands. And in those years, London was the swinging 60s, this was like the late 60s. And that we got into this thing, and by 24, 25, 1970, we were really swinging. We were all over the world with our branding at that time, and we were manufacturing in Hong Kong and manufacturing in India, and through legal circumstance, we couldn't get enough cotton. We weren't allowed to buy enough cotton in the UK. So I took us offshore to manufacture in Malta, which is an island south of Sicily in the Mediterranean. And we stayed there for the next couple of years until 1973, when the Maltese government kind of took a turn, and we were part of a nationalization that went on. And I went back to the UK again and stayed back in the UK for the next couple of years, and then finally moved to North America, that had really grown to a thinking that, wow, that's really where I want to be. In 1976, I moved to New York City in 1976. I think it was February in 76.
Oh, wow, Peter, that was fascinating. Thank you for that backstory. And before we start diving full speed into business, because some viewers only want to talk money, which I'm cool with that. I also have viewers that really want to understand the depth and study why people are successful. And for you, I heard so many things there, Peter, that was so fascinating. From one, you became a dad, so you turned on like, hey, listen, I have to provide for my family mentality, and I have to be a man, and I am going to be business partners. And you start this from scratch. Sounds like you were trying to be as big as Levi's became. But you were also just trying to make ends meet and create success. So you had to do what you had to do, and created all these learning of business by direct materials and sourcing. It taught you a lot. What I'm
Yeah, it taught me a lot, actually. I learned to be an international trader in those years. And, the foundation wasn't that we were going to get massive. We got huge, actually. But there was no thought towards getting big. We just it just happened. We were the hippie traders kind of thing. And in fact, we were the hippie traders. That's what we were. We were the hippie traders. We'd cruise off to different places and do different things, and the product line just grew and grew and grew. And it was just a period of time. A lot of youth, a lot of inexperience, and I don't know that we ever really did anything, right. If there is a right or there's a wrong or there's a good or there's a bad, I don't think we ever really did anything right. We were there at the right time. Just that was it. It was just the right time, had the right connections, the right relationships. We had the opportunities, and we actually took them. And that actually taught me something that I carry to this day about opportunity. I think it's one of the most important areas of creativity and business. And I look at opportunity in a way that if I see opportunity, I make split-second decision and I embrace it fully. I use the analogy of a shooting star. When you see a shooting star, it's gone in a second, but you always remember the moment that you see it. And that's what I call opportunity, and embrace that moment in time. And that continues on.
Now, I have a quick question about that with opportunity. For my human design, I like to see opportunity, but then kind of let me get all the facts first. Let me sit on the opportunity. Let me think about it and then attack. I know if I prolong that shooting star is gone. But would you say for certain people that split-second decision might not be good for it? They might need to embrace the opportunity?
Yeah. There's a couple of places in that are really important, and it's a personal choice. I kind of worked it out quite recently that if I'm 15% into something, I go. That and that's a math, but business is math and science. So it really is math. It's like if I'm 15% in, I see it, I go, wow, that's got it. That's got legs. Let me go. And the whole of my energy gets involved with it at that moment in time.
That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing, Peter. And now I just want to touch on this, and then we're going to speed up that episode and talk about your knowledge in business and running companies now, and what your coaching is and whatnot. You are coined the creator of the technology for the flat screen TV, for the visual, when you took the visual idea, or you took an idea from the Army. Explain a little bit further. It was so fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, what we call flat screen TV was my name. I named it flat screen TV. It was actually called the plasma display panel, and it was invented in 1962 by Owings Corning, IBM, and the University of Illinois. And they developed this primarily for DoD, Department of Defense, for military utilization in airplane cockpit and for submarine. They wanted a thin form display instead of the old bulky CRT. So by 1986, IBM had decided that they couldn't utilize the technology in an area that they wanted to, which was to put it into a laptop, because the technology burns quite hot. The screen display was quite hot. And also it was monochrome. It was like a horrible orangey red color as a display tech. So there were, so it was not a TV by any means. It was just a display panel. I was lucky enough in those days because I was in New York City. I built a small tech company that took the original LED and put together large display boards and billboards and the LED ticker displays and the stock exchange and the bourse around the world. And we'd been the first in North America to actually do that. That was a technology that came from British Aerospace. A friend of mine introduced me to it. One of my trips back to the UK, I think 1978 or something, 77. And I'd taken that technology and brought it over to America and worked with a small group of engineers. And we built the first of the dot matrix displays that later became the billboards that are ubiquitous in the world today. So I was quite involved in display at that time, and therefore I was invited by this group to get involved in this plasma display technology. A friend of mine, Steve Globus, invested and bought the IBM stock and all their inventory and all their technology and their management team as a management buyout. And Steve spoke to me about it. And I looked at this tech and I thought, well, you know, it's not quite right for my display business, but I just see some possibilities. And over a period of time, I got to know that there was development going on for it in Japan as well. And they were looking to actually produce a thin slimline TV and release it to the general public in 2003. So this is going back to 1986, 1987. This is long-term stuff here, long-term strategy, long-term business. The reason that they had decided it was so far in advance is it was going to take at least 20 years to develop, to get color into it, to make it into a thin form, to actually be able to get a TV onto the market. As well as that, their cash cow was the CRT, the cathode ray tube, that was the big fat TVs as we knew them. And in those years, 89, 90, they were producing between the large Japanese Keiretsu, the Japanese manufacturers that we know of today that still exist, of course. The large guys are still the same big guys. They were producing between them around 60 million units a year. And they reckoned that by 2003, they could have production capacity of about 6 million flat panels a year. And they were willing to disrupt their CRT business when they got to 6 million units a year, or 10% of their requirement, because they knew as soon as they released a flat panel, nobody ever wanted a CRT anymore. So I got to know about all this, and here am I running this small kind of tech business in New York in the midst of you know, the fashion industry, the arts and the design and the music thing that was going on in New York in these years. I had a 3,000 square foot loft on Lower Broadway in the midst of what is now Soho. And we had everything kind of going for us. Again, we were in at the right time, at the right, you know, the right space, the right time with the right tech. So we set to work, and by 92, 93, there'd been a development, and some of the first colors had been put onto these displays, 256K colors. To get to TV, you need 20.6 million is the, you know, it's quite listen, the TV technology business is massive, but you needed such an advancement. So we started actually playing with the early 256K colors, like an early computer screen. And there was a big problem. The plasma panel was digital. All television was analog. There were no analog cameras. There were no analog studios, and there was no way of transferring an analog signal to a digital signal. So that's where we actually took our kind of edge. And we built an analog to digital signal converter. We also took the format, which was another kind of problem. TV in those days was a 4:3 format. We took that onto what was a digital display that was 16:9. So we did a resizing, and we played around in those days with it. and actually produced the first of the large displays in 95 and started showing them at the Atlanta Olympics in 96, together with Avon Cosmetics. Quite an interesting kind of shoot there.
That is unbelievable. That is crazy because it's just a journey you went on with something that was people. It's just like people didn't know it was coming to the surface, and you were someone who helped with that creativity. I think it stems back to your childhood. Now, my $1 million question is, did it give you a lot of financial gain too through all this?
Yeah, in a period of time. The early LEDs were great. We were able to finance this next operation into plasma TV. And by 97, I moved the whole operation into California. Came out of New York City. There wasn't growth for me in New York City, but I was able to get growth into Silicon Valley, into California. And we actually took our three components: the resizing, the analog to digital, and the cooling system that we built as well. And we took that and traded that off to another company. By then, I realized that there was no way I would ever become a consumer electronics company. I didn't have the mentality, I didn't have the want and desire, and there's no space. The Japanese owned the world in those days. Also in those days, the Koreans were starting to come up. And we went through some really interesting periods, prior to the transition into California. And by then, in February 1997, we launched the world's first consumer flat screen TV. It was globally televised. We did it from the 57th Street showroom for a catalog company called Hammacher Schlemmer. Hammacher Schlemmer were the first of the big tech catalog companies. They'd done the first answer phone. They'd done the first kind of electronic toaster. And they had this beautiful store on 57th Street in New York City. And we brought in all of the original old TVs. All of the TV stations were invited in. We did live broadcasts from there. Myself and Bill, the president of Hammacher Schlemmer, we did a formal unveiling of the world's first flat screen TV. They had them on the front page of their catalog. The first one was I think the first 42-inch TV was $20,000. We made 6 of them, stainless steel, all signed by me and Bill, and we did this TV show. CNN started then to kind of broadcast and invite us on, and so there was a lot of everybody wanted a flat TV, everybody wanted a hang-on-the-wall TV, and I actually, in one of my statements to one of my TV things with CNN, I said, well, other people have mirrors in their bedroom. I actually have a TV on my ceiling. So, when you make that kind of statement, of course, in the late 90s, people are going, oh my God, is this real? But everybody wanted one. There's no way we could make them. We opened this production facility in Foster City, just outside San Mateo, north of Silicon Valley. And we started manufacturing. It was quite difficult to manufacture. By then, of course, all the Japanese Keiretsu found out that I was doing what they had as crown jewels in this small way. And the interesting thing is that all of my components came from them. They didn't know it was happening. I was lucky enough, I had somebody that I got friendly with in the US military, and we were getting all of these samples that were supposed to be for military, but the military didn't want it at that time. It was too hot. So it was an interesting thing. But we sold our IP, sold our tech, and I went into, I wouldn't say retirement, but I went to the field of what's next. I'd become a dinosaur.
So Peter, and now we're gonna turn on to that business wisdom that you have. But I do need to point out right there that last part that you said, and it really, is a huge thing for entrepreneurs. And I don't want to tread lightly. I want to ask and understand. You said you sold the IP, meaning the intellectual property.
Yeah.
That means
Yeah.
your technology that you created, that it was considered yours and your company's, you sold
Yeah.
that intellectual property to your
Yeah.
exit strategy that was
Yeah.
created financial gain for you. That
Yeah.
where you could be pretty much, you reached a lot of your goals at that point. Was it that moment a surreal moment?
Yeah. Or so I thought. However, I'd also become the most hated man in the consumer electronics business by that time, because I'd broken the crown jewels that were subject to be sent out to the world in 2003. And here I was in 1997. I owned these words called flat screen TV. Philips, who are one of the majors that had a deal with Fujitsu, who were the people who made all the components and still do to this day, of course, Fujitsu. Philips had a deal with Fujitsu, and they owned the words of flat TV. So, of course, we got into a bit of a lawsuit that lasted for the next couple of years and was very costly. Um, and there's big learning in this. Let me tell you, don't get your ego engaged. My ego got engaged. I owned flat screen TV. That was the name. However, we actually lost the lawsuit because of the cost of it. I had to make a decision. So we're not going to go, they had hundreds of attorneys. We only had a couple. So I said, look, we're not going to go any further with this. Let them win. They owned flat TV. We still owned flat screen TV, but the name on their panel was now Flat TV. And that's the way it was. However, they're still called flat screen TV. So I lost the war, or I lost the war, but I won a battle, kind of thing. But the secret here is, Danny, don't get your ego engaged. It's just another deal.
Let me tell you, thank you for saying that. I'm going to say that a lot this show, Peter, because there's a lot to thank you with your wisdom, because my ego got in the way in my business thus far. I became an entrepreneur right after I graduated Florida State University 2013. Obviously, you'll figure you're an entrepreneur since the early mentality, but when you step into that real world and you let your ego get in the way, it'll cost you. It'll cost you. You'll see. It's not going to just cost you financially. It's going to cost you with other mentally and spiritually in so many different ways. So I'm thankful that I learned how to understand the ego, and we'll dive into that in the mindset. I want to stay on business with you because you have a lot of nuggets, I call it, for people to learn. Let's talk about running a successful company. You became a coach. Let's say, I don't want to speed up too fast, but after that, when did you see the passion for helping other business owners?
It's an interesting question. I'd had a lot of help, and I'd also learned that I was alone. I'd made a lot of decisions on my own. So when I say I'd had a lot of help, I had a lot of help from people who were willing to do the work. But I had zero help from people who were in business per se. And it became apparent to me, I'd done this trade. I'd kind of ended up in, I'd moved. But that time I was living in San Francisco. I'd been there for about a year. Really wasn't having a great time. I actually moved us out to the coastline in Monterey, one of the most beautiful places, I think, and certainly in California, and probably one of the most beautiful coastlines in the world. And I spent my day. I'd also become a barefoot beach runner. It gave me some grounding. I'd been in high tech. I'd been in New York City for 20 years. I'd always stayed fit and healthy. But I took on this way of being, of barefoot beach running. I followed some old African runners, and I really got to enjoy myself. And it really started to ground me. And I knew that there was no way I was going to do tech again. By then I wasn't like a dinosaur compared to what was going on, but I'd gained a lot of friends in the tech business. And there were a number of them like myself, same age group, who'd done similar kind of deals. And in those days, the deals were not in the billions, they were still in the millions. So, and I got friendly with a few of them, and we'd talk. And a lot of us went through that similar thing, that we made decisions as loners. We had teams around us, but when it comes to decision, and I realized that business owners really are loners. And it kind of developed from there. I also had a very, very close friend of mine who was like my younger brother, who had taken a life coaching course. And one day in conversation, I remember I'd just come back from a run. I was sitting in my car, and I was on the, I think that, I was on this like path of not really knowing where I was going, but knowing that I wanted to do something that involved other business owners like myself. I enjoyed conversations with other people. And I'd been really lucky, I'd met with some of the greats, because my original TVs were actually in some of the houses of the biggest names in technology to this day. So I met these people, and I just had a feeling. And I had this conversation with Bob Silverstone, who I'd known for many, many years, and had taken on this coaching course. And after a bit of time, Bob said to me, Peter, he said, you should be doing what I'm doing. You've worked around the world, you've built businesses, you've built teams, you've led organizations, you've been innovative. I said, but Bob, I was offered a consultancy when, after this IP sale, and I just don't want to go out there and promote other people's products. I don't want to be that consultant. I don't want to do that kind of work. And he said, well, no, coaching's slightly different. Why don't you kind of consider it? So I considered it. I went off and took a coaching course, a life coaching course, and I hated it. I came back and I said, no, it's not going to work, Bob. It's just like, it's too kind of loosey-goosey, airy-fairy for me. Those were my words, actually. I remember them to this day because I often speak them. And then he said, well, what about a business coaching? So I took a business coaching course, and I came back, and I really disliked it. It wasn't for me. It was all stuff that, as a business owner, it was the grind stuff for me, people that I hired other people to do. And I said, no, that's not going to work. But I liked the attitude of being able to talk to business owners like myself. So I actually spent a couple of months, and I wrote a program that I utilize to this day called BudinessLife. And it was made for business owners and founders. And it was built upon this assumption that owners are loners. We make decisions. We have to make decisions. And that was the foundation of my coaching business. And also, I'd continued my relationship in the Valley and went back to some of the people that I'd grown close to and said, look, I'm doing this new thing. What do you think? Can we have a chat? I'd like to see if it's possible that what I'm thinking could work with other people. And I started coaching. And then somebody said something great to me. I said, you know what, Peter? Coaches coach. That's all they do. And they don't stop coaching until somebody says, stop coaching me. I can't stand it anymore. And that broke it for me. I really kind of got it and said, oh, okay, that's interesting. And that's when I started coaching. That was, I guess, the beginning of 90, maybe the middle of 98, I really started it professionally.
Yeah, and when I was reading up on you, I mean, I know of you, and I know that you're around a lot of highly successful people because of the respect that you've gained. And one thing I saw was that it says it's all about you. You take an approach like it's all about you, and I think that's was the difference of coaches until the player quits per se, versus hey, listen, it's all about you. Now, what defines a business owner that you see they're going to be successful? What's some principles that you see?
Yeah. Well, I have I guess it's really a gut feeling. You brought up that word before, about that feeling and that gut. I'd like to get to know who I'm talking to. I like to spend some time with them and really get an idea as to what they're into. And that's developed really over the years, this trust. I trust in myself, and I think that's one of the things that defines how I look at others. I see a spark in somebody. I see that want and desire. I see that willingness. One of the things I look for is somebody that gets up in the morning. It's quite a simple thing. Somebody that gets up in the morning, somebody that accepts that, the title is really. I do a number of different things. I work very much on job titles as well. Somebody that says, yeah, I'm a leader in this organization, or I'm a leader in this foundation. The word leader is an egoistic title. It's like doctor or lawyer or mother or father. And it gives somebody else an opportunity to really make a decision and see the other person without digging in too deeply. But I take that word of leader and actually institute the attitude of leadership. And that's really where I like to begin. I like to know that the person has got capability and willingness to speak and to tell their own story. I like to know that not only do they tell their story, but that they have a story and it's not somebody else's. I've got to know a number of trainers, and perhaps it's well worth an introduction here as to the difference of the way that I look upon it. Trainers are people that tell you how to do it. Consultants are people that come along and say, hey, I've got a couple of ideas. If you hire me, I'll work with you in them. Mentors are people who actually have done the job before and are willing to share their knowledge. And coaches, I believe, are people who run alongside the individual who's got an idea and is willing to go out and implement it. And a coach can really step into that realm.
That's powerful, Peter. I really like how you broke that down, because I never I never thought of defining those different things like that. And it really sets a perspective for a business owner to approach what they need. So it's like you're hiring assassins to be there to help you, to be a brain for you. But there's different types. There's how you mentioned, those 4 types is very, very smart. So you take that approach to run alongside people because it's Peter Marcus coaching. Now, with that, you're watching the evolution of companies. What do you think are some qualities that make a company great?
Well, the ability to manage their finances is vital. That's like, listen, runways are vital. You have to know how far you can go on the money you've got. The ability to attract individuals and sustain a forward-thinking attitude. Core values of an organization are imperative. The core values, I think, people always talk about a mission statement and a vision. This is where we're going to be, and this is how we're going to go about it. But the inclusion and the institution of core values into that is really what people get. And core values might be as simple as, we pay our bills on Thursday. We open our store at 8 a.m. We care for our employees. Core values are really what people get. Core values, we're here to help. core values, the customer is always right. I look at the way that we communicate. To me, communication is the vital component. It's interesting because we're back now to the job ideas in tech was about communication. It was about the messaging that we came across with in our early LED displays. It was the way that we actually built the display or the flat screen TV to bring messaging across. It's that communication tool. And I'm a real believer in internal and external communications. One of the things that we've done for our most successful organizations was actually instituted the thing that today is called content marketing. And I remember, in bringing this to people, and they look at me like, well, why do we want to do content? It's not what we're doing. It's not our focus. But I've always done this for years and years and years. And to me, it's vital. It's the way we can communicate. And of course, now content is like, that's the name of the game. Social media is all about the content that you put out and the way you utilize your content. But to me, it was so important. And a number of relationships have broken down for me because of an unwillingness or an inability or an unavailability to actually institute content into the way that people ran their business. And I say that in the way that people ran their business, because this is really important. When we put content out, it's about external communication. It tells the story of who we are. And that's what people get.
And that's really true, Peter, because you're tapping into someone's heart when you're talking to them, whether you're selling any type of product or service. And the messaging is so imperative so that they know what story you're telling behind this simple product or service that is to fulfill a need, but the story of how it got there. And obviously, it's not black and white. The story is very important, but a quality product is more important or whatnot. But every point you made, I thought I really did align with completely. And one thing I want to bring up also, and backtrack a little bit about defining a great organization. We talked a little bit about finance and operations, and I want to understand like your mentality of how you approach all the pillars, including, well, we talked about marketing, sales. Sales is something I'm very familiar with. What's your take on sales for an organization, and what's your advice in that department?
I taught the bits and pieces of business. And to me, sales is, if you're not making sales, you're not going to be in business. It's so basic. Sales is the name of the game for business. It doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if you're a dentist or a lawyer. If you're not making sales, you don't have a business. If you're a product, if you're not making sales, you're not in business. And making sales is really the making of a business. So, I've worked, like I said, over the years with lots of tech companies. And, we've got this. And one of the secrets I learned as a young person in tech was that I learned to talk to the inventor and utilize my own intellect as to what I would do with what that inventor said they were inventing. And I would utilize that view and make a sales conversation going forward from there. And make a sales conversation from what I learned. Wow, I looked at this little kind of LED, this little diode, and I said, wow, you put a bunch of those together and you can, flash pictures or flash movement and do that kind of thing. But the inventors talked about these diodes, and you put two wires in here and this chemical mix, and that's a very, very different way of being. But if you're not making sales, you're no longer in business. And management of sales is vital. The creativity required is vital.
Mm, so true. And we're going to touch on leadership because you did bring it up earlier. Another question I had for you, when it came down to it, is hierarchy you mentioned. What's your take on hierarchies in organizations? A mentor of mine, Ryan Blair, mentioned his buddy who tragically passed away from Zappos, the founder of Zappos, ran his organization. It's called Holacracy or something, or correct me if I'm wrong. What's your take on hierarchy?
Yeah, hierarchy. Well, I like to turn hierarchy upside down, and I like to put leadership as the foundation for everything else that happens. And then above leadership, because if leadership is the foundation, above that is leader, and above that is the the CEO or the president, and above that is the exec team, and above that are the VPs. So I turn hierarchy upside down, and it's all about leadership to me. It's really the thing is that if the leadership doesn't take duty and responsibility, it's never going to work. It's never going to. Things don't travel up a company; they travel down a company. So when you turn it upside down, I would never take on an organization for myself or any of our coaches or any of our collaborations. We would never take on a client unless the founder was involved in the conversation. I work purely with founder and owner, but our other coaches work with many different levels, marketing, sales, organization, planning, strategies. But I will never take on a team in an organization unless the owner is a part of that team conversation. So it's really about leadership. Hierarchy, to me, it doesn't work.
Let's dig in a little bit to that word leadership then, Peter. Leadership, what do you define it as? And then why is it so important?
Leadership is the game. That's the game. And when you formulate a business, you're actually putting together a new game. And perhaps the game has certain kind of pre-existent rules, like if you put a technology business together or you put a fashion business together, then there are some existing rules of those games, distribution, supply, marketing, there are rules around it. But I'm a believer that as a founder, when you put that together, you actually design the game of what that's going to look like. And the leader's job is to care for the team. I've been a follower for years of something that I heard about. I don't know how close to reality it is. I didn't even want to check it out because I'm a believer in what I heard. And that is that in Zen Buddhism, the highest priest has the job of washing the rice. And that to me is leadership. That's caring for the people. Now, people may say that's servant leadership, but I love it as Zen leadership. Wow, Zen Buddhism. The job is to wash the rice. The job is to care for the people. That's leadership. We talk about it all day, every day, every day. And leadership is not limited to the top person. Leadership is a personal way of being. I can bring leadership into this conversation with you, and this is yours. But I can bring leadership into it by my presenting myself at my best, by my caring, by my attitude, by my want, by my desire. I can bring that stuff. And it's part of the criteria that we work with. You asked a question earlier on about making decision. One of the ways that I make a decision to take on a client is by asking them, what do they want to get out of our relationship?
I like that. Expectation.
Yeah, what do I want to get out of our relationship? And I say this, look, the more you want to get, the more probability. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you to sit down for a few minutes and just write a list of things that you want to get from our relationship. And when you're done, let's talk again. And then when that list is there, and I keep saying, look, the list is not static. It doesn't end here. It's something for you to continue to build on and really note down what you want to get. You know, I often have conversations, or, you know, perhaps until COVID really struck us down, my conversations were always over lunch or over breakfast or over, you know, over something that was away from the formal office of my client. It was always a choice. I wanted to get into some intermediary space where it wasn't their space. And I would say, okay, you know, just make a note of some of the things that you want to get. And let me model it for you is always a way that I'll bring it. And I say, you know, I want to get to have a good lunch with you. I want to get to bring my credit card so that I can pay for it. I want to get to know more about you. I want to get to spend my time with you. Now we're starting to open up. It's not just, I want to get to build a big business. I want to get somebody's finance. I want to get to make more sales. We're now starting to get into the nitty-gritty of the individual. This is where I work. I work in that little area there, that space of ownership. And the more that you want to get, the more possibility of doing that. When we've had a look at what it is that I want to get, the next question is, have a look at what it is that you will bring to get what you want to get. And these two questions might seem very simple, but the two questions are really earth and world shattering for any individual that really is willing to go there. Because when you look at what it is that you can bring, you can only bring what you've got. There's a very simple rule, right? If I've not got $10 million, I can't bring it. But, you know, if I've got 2 million, I can bring that. I can bring my time. Like I said, I can bring my expertise. I can bring my want, my desire, my wishes, my thoughts. I can bring my consideration. I can bring my expertise. I can bring my thoughts. I can bring my associations. I can bring my relationships. These are things I can bring. So when we put these two things together, now we've got a package.
You said so much there. I'm almost telling you, I'm feeling it in and processing it, because it really, you made a lot of valid points there, and it shows you are a leader, Peter. It shows that you are someone who wants to lead someone in the right direction and not just be a cliche, get your money and go type person. You're way more advanced than that. And another thing I saw that I'm thinking you're bringing to this equation is almost some spirituality into business, because you know, when you're good, when you're focused, and when you're manifesting, let's talk about that word. It's a very cliche word being thrown around right now, but what you're having your clients do is you're having them visualize by writing it down and then believe it and then feel it. So you're technically having them manifest it, but you're going to work towards it in reality with a clean conscience and best version. Is that type of approach that you're doing too, or not really thinking it like that?
Yeah, it really is a way of, you know, I call it a shortcut actually, because I've met so many people that do this job of coach or consultant or trainer. I want to move away from the trainer thing, because to me, you train somebody, they do it, then they lose it. It's not theirs. The consultant also, I want to move away from that, because consultant brings ideas. Look, I'm not being derogatory to these two areas of growth potential, but I really want to stay focused here in the way of methodology that I work in personally as a coach, which is to get from the individual what it is that they already have. I work in the sport coach business, right? I mean, that's it. My original kind of coaches that I kind of built my business on were two soccer coaches from Manchester, one in the 50s and one later on into the 70s. And they were both very caring. They knew their players. They asked everything of their players, and their players respected them enough to build themselves into being who they had capabilities to build. One can only do what one can do. I'll never be 6'4", blonde hair and blue eyes. It's not who I am. But I can be a pretty good example of myself. That whole thing, right? What is it? You can be, it's easier to be 100% of yourself than 1% of anybody else. So that's it. But this way of being, this shortcut I talk about, is by actually entering into somebody else's being and either nudging them or reminding them or moving alongside them. My kind of cliche statement is, I become another head on that person's shoulders. They hear me whispering in their ears. I often get a phone call. Hey, Peter, this morning I was working on this thing and I thought to myself, what would Peter say? That's my job, is to sit right there and be in that position. And it's a position of trust. I worked over the past almost 8 years now. We work, of course, in the US. I've worked a bit in the UK over many of these years. And then about 8 years ago, we started to work in Northern Italy. And I moved my business into Northern Italy, because I love Como, which is, I have a home in Como. I have two places that I live right now. One is Como and one is Palm Beach. And they're both beautiful, beautiful places. But I chose Northern Italy because of the amount and the value of family business. Excuse me. The amount and the value of family business there. The largest fashion houses are family owned. The largest furniture designs, family owned. The car businesses were family owned. And I love family business. And family business has its own set of circumstances and its own frailties and its own difficulties, but in Northern Italy, the attitude is so formulated. The patron, the grandfather still sits there, and the grandmother still comes in, and Nonna and Papa, and they make the decisions. And I guess that I'm lucky because I'm an older guy as well. So I can get on with these people because they look around and they go, consultants, we don't deal with them. Coaches, no. But I'm with them. We talk a similar language, and we sit and we work together, but not in the formal ways I think that a lot of people work together. Look, they've been doing this for 2 or 3 generations. Often these families that we talk about, the silk manufacturers, the ink manufacturers that we work with out there, the furniture manufacturers we work with out there, the farmers that we work with out there. It's quite an interesting mix of people, but these attitudes of ownership are really where we take it. And we actually bring in this leadership, knowledge, and way of being. And you remind these people, as I call them, these individuals about leadership and what it is that they do on a daily basis without really considering it. They care for myriad of families who've grown with them and cared for them over the years. They own industries. They are in themselves so well respected. They actually at times lose connection with tomorrow's world or today's world because of it. And because of the family hierarchy, there's often not a lot of room for the younger members to actually grow into it. So it's quite an interesting area. It's an area I love, actually. I love working in that specific.
Let me ask you something, Peter, on that note. With being around that type of status, presidents of nations and royals getting this type of advice too?
One of my perhaps gurus has been doing this work for many, many years, and been working in this way for many, many years with presidents and with leaders of nations. Of course, you know, in today's world, it's very, very difficult because there really is never any time for a president to do things before the media stories dissipate or change what's going on. You know, I'm a follower of Werner Erhard, and Werner, I was lucky enough, you know, in the 70s to actually do a training called EST, which was the Erhard something trainings, seminars and trainings, right? And Werner, a leader. I mean, I look at Werner's work to this day, and he's been doing that work for years. You know, if we look at Tony Robbins today, Tony does this kind of work. This is going on. Let me tell you, the break between leadership at that level and the people is just so great, and is getting greater. You know, the larger our governments, the less connection and communication that we really have, I think. And you know, without talking politics that are very, very difficult for me to speak about, I just see that the influence that is available, I think, in today's day and age is just not given a chance to operate, because there is just so many levels in between. You know, we look at any business today, and if you can involve conversation into that business, the business is going to change its structure. I love working in startup. I've been lucky enough to be a mentor. I started mentoring in technology startup in 1997, actually, at the University of Berkeley, in the engineering school. And then we took that program, that entrepreneurial program, we took it off into, it became a program in Stanford. And if you look at two of the largest organizations in the world today, both of those organizations took their foundation from coaching methodology from those days. In fact, Google today, you can go online today and apply for a job. And one of the questions is about coaching. Coaching as a methodology is the way to do it. A lot of companies start to grow and they don't realize the value of conversation, how it works with team building. Team building is vital. And this also is a founder's attitude. It's one of the core values. You know, building a team is so vital. Having that relationship and applying duty and responsibility, having clearly defined rules and regulations. These are the secrets of business today. You know, a lot of companies struggle because they don't have clarity. They don't have definition. There are too many kind of gray areas. So we see that going on every day in business.
You know, it's funny you said that because another mentor of mine, Jim Fannin, I got to work with before, he always used to teach me, Danny, authority, responsibility, accountability is so vital. So you hit the nail on the head. I remember working with you, how much you would just get me to write down. I remember we would spend whatever time it took on the whiteboard writing everything that I did in my role and responsibility so I could map it out and understand where to go. Which leads me to, what's it like working with people who are doing millions and billions of dollars in business? What's it like to embrace this, you know, relationship and just be around this? Like, is it fascinating?
Yeah, it truly has been a gift for me, because I guess I get to see that, you know, we're all human, we're frail. the frailties actually show up. Can you hear me? Are we okay?
Yeah, I'm pointing like to the camera, like you got me with
Okay.
that one. You got me with that one,
Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah, well, I got to keep my eye on you because I know that you're a goer, you're a mover and a shaker. So I've got to stay young and healthy and fit to keep up with you. But it really is. It's been transformational for me. Another thing, 1997, I guess, was a really important year for me. I went through a number of changes. I just mentioned the fact that I was invited to join this entrepreneurial course mentor program at Berkeley University. Now, I'd been out of school at 15, and so for me, university was like, oh my God, and I'd also always wanted to be in the background, although I'd always kind of found myself in the foreground. But I was like, I wanted to stay outside, didn't really want people to find out about me. If I was out there prominently leading things, people would find out that, I was like this and that. So, but I remember that it was a 4-person team when I joined the program. I was invited by 2 brothers, Wayne and Wade Dickinson. They actually were the inventors for a technology that today is called fracking. They developed this technology for the oil drill that went round bends and pushed out water and enabled fracking as we know it today. But Wade and Wayne Wade's daughter, Kate, who I'm still friendly with, is interesting. 1997, they actually came to a launch party that we did at the Bohemian Club for flat screen TV in San Francisco. Now, the Bohemian Club is a very, very special place. I'm going to ask you to investigate it afterwards. So I'm sure you're going to kind of see things about it. Anyway, they came to a launch that we did at the Bohemians. I got this special invitation to be in the Bohemians, and it was a big deal in those days. Flat screen TV was a big deal in those days, So Wade came and they invited me very shortly afterwards to join this entrepreneurial mentoring program for first-year engineering students at Berkeley University. Now, then, in those days, the first of the influx of Eurasians was coming in with great technology brains. And anyway, so we put this program together, and it was built upon a coaching methodology of building team building, attitude, working together. And it exists to this day. Like I said, it exists in 2 of the largest organizations in the world today as a methodology of coaching. I think I lost some of my conversation there, but I'm going to leave it at that for a moment.
It's so cool to hear your stories because there's so many, and I want to speak to you even more and more and more about your journey. It's a couple of things where I want the audience to hear before we'll wrap the episode up. Is I want people to understand that let's call you an older gentleman in a very respectful way, Peter, but you've been able to see so much of this world over the past 70 plus years, and you've created all this wisdom from that. My question to you is mindset, real quick. What tips do you give to people to keep your mindset strong on this journey of life? And what do you do at this age to keep yourself sharp?
Well, I am still a barefoot beach runner. I decided in 97 that I would always live by the beach so that I could fill that aim. And every day for the rest of my life, unless I am traveling or in a place that there's no way I can barefoot run, that was the gift I was going to give myself. And I gave myself that gift on August 29th, 1997. That was my birthday. And each day I do it, it's like opening a present to myself. The other thing that I do is have a total loss of memory of everything that I've done with a client once I've left their premises, kind of thing, or we've ended our conversation until the next time. And I've actually cultivated that, because I found that if I continued, oh, well, what are we going to do next time? I'd get into a quagmire and really unable to take on my next conversation. So I've actually, I learned to kind of train myself into, okay, put that stuff aside. I'm clear. And but I think the exercise is vitally important. Food is vitally important, and be in an experience. Be clear that the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give it everything I've got. It's my opportunity. My opportunity in coming here today is, wow, what a gift. Now I can come and sit back and go, oh yeah, well, we did this and we did that. Or I could come here and go, wow, Danny, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this gift that you've given me.
Wow, so your perspective on life every day, you're always looking the good. You're looking for things, the lesson, you're looking for the great in everything, and you're showing up with a great attitude. And I really love that, because, as you maybe age in life, you might think that, oh, no, just kick back and just let life. No, but you're attacking it head on still, and you're so vibrant, and you're considered an older person, where you think, cliche that you're just going to be lounging all the time, Peter, but you're out there conquering the world still. It's really inspiring.
We started something recently because of this recognition thing. I'm a believer that we acknowledge each other for what it is we do. So about a year or so ago, I decided that what we were going to do is we were going to take a bunch of our clients that had really shown up in their own things, in their own lives, in their own businesses, and we were going to award them with a certificate. And the certificate that we started at that time was going to be blockchain backed, and therefore available on the internet and verifiable. And that's what we started doing. We do this now with all of our programs, all of our coaches. We do it around the world. We have a blockchain-backed digital certificate program that people get for, we have one called First Team Player Award. We went on Clubhouse for 5-6 months ago. We do a daily show on Clubhouse. I involved myself because these are the things that allow me to kind of embrace them as opportunities.
That's great. And you show it because you're also going to attract all that type of stuff more to your life, because you're putting in the action in a very positive way, and you have a lot of experience to I would say not make the same mistake twice when you approach new territories and whatnot. But you're doing that out of love, it sounds like.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. A question that was asked to me a long time ago. Peter, as you age, Danny, as you age, and you get to the pearly gates and St. Peter says to you, okay, let's have a look at your record here. And St. Peter asks you the question, so, did you come here all used up, or did you come here with lots of go for the future? How would you react to that?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I would react to it by saying, there's no end, so I came accomplished and still hungry.
I love it. Good answer, man. Good answer. I made the answer up for myself that said, when I get there, I want to be all used up.
Mm-hmm. I want to say that answer, Peter. You know what? I do. That's my answer. My answer is
but that's who you are, Danny. You see, that's what I know about you.
I want to have the faith to know that this journey was all used up, and I maximized it, and I made myself and my family proud. But I'm very open to what's next.
Yeah. I remember one experience with you. I think one of the first weeks that I ever kind of joined you in a meeting, and you came and you kind of opened up from a very spiritual place And I knew at that time, in my own inner sense that, this young man's going places. And that was the sense that you delivered to me. And you came and you threw it all out on the table. That was the difference. When you push it all out there, being in business is rather like being a painter or a sculptor. A painter or a sculptor, often when they get their work there, the big decision is, now I've got to show it. And when I show it, people are going to like it. They're not going to like it. They're not going to buy it. I'm open to ridicule. Being in business is the same. Being an owner is the same. And I liken myself to an artist. I say I'm an artist in business. I'm creative, I'm action oriented, and I'm willing to put it out there on the line.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I want to ask you that I consider you, a leader for this world. I know you're a philanthropist. I know that you're creating these foundations. And what would you say is next for you? Like, where's your vision right now? That we talked about the core values is very important to a business, but the vision is important once you nail down the core values. Where are you going? Where's your vision now?
It's such a big question. I do ponder that question. What is my vision? The easy answer is, that we live in such uncertain times that anything I can do to bring a semblance of reality back is everything for me. And my vision is to be actively engaged in giving everything I've got back into society, at any level and for any reason. And I guess I'm going to stop there.
Is that part of your why?
Yeah. My why is I've been, why me? But my dad gave me a book years ago. Oh, it just kind of clicked in here. And the book was titled, If Not Me, Who? And If Not Now, When? And that's one of the titles I've lived with. Another title I've lived with is another kind of guru for me, Gurdjieff, wrote a book called Meetings with Remarkable Men. And it's an allegoric story, but it's one that I guess for the first 10 or 15 years of my coaching career, I would give to men that I was working with, that I saw kind of an affinity or had an affinity with. And as an allegoric story, it's the journey of him through his life and the different phases of a man's life, and for me, many times in my life, I've considered myself the trickster. Many times in my life, I've considered myself the lover. Many times the magician, many times, all of these kind of areas. And this book, Meetings with Remarkable Men, I actually took on the title, that being a man is a remarkable experience.
Wow. And what's your take on the word happiness?
Man, I'm happy right now. We're done. I'm going to have a cup of coffee, maybe have some dinner. My take on the word, I think I was always frightened of it. This thing of happiness. Now I just clicked back. What I was saying about this Berkeley thing, 1997, I was introduced to 3,000 people in Zellenbeck Hall, University of Berkeley. And they brought me out on stage and said, we want to introduce you to Peter Marcus. He's a streetwise entrepreneur.
Ah, there it is. And that's what RB Barroso is. And I'm going to give him one shout out because we all worked together in the past, is that we're streetwise entrepreneurs.
I love him.
He's good people. Great people.
I love him. Yeah.
So, to wrap up, Peter, and thank you so much for the time and the opportunity to speak with you. What's some final pieces of advice, let's say to a person who's early on in life, let's say before 30 years old, and they need some wise advice from Peter Marcus in business and life?
Yeah. Put yourself in the game of practice. It's not about playing the big game. It's about when you're called on to play the big game, it's just another day in the game of practice. Be in the game of practice. Get up, get regular, do what you love to do. Love is really important. Do what you love to do. But I think this thing about, we have some cliche titles in our programs, playing a bigger game. It's all about you. Have a look at who you've become. But I think the biggest one of all of them is put yourself in the game of practice. Really show up for what you do. Be there on time. Bring your best. My business card actually is very formed for a reason. My business card says it's all about you. And actually, whenever I used to hand my business card, I've said the same to you. So look, this is my business card. It's not made to go on your desk or in your wallet. It's made to go in the left-hand corner of your bathroom mirror. And each morning when you go and clean your teeth or comb your hair or take a shave or put on your makeup, depends on how you feel on the course of that day, have a look into the mirror and have a look into your own eyes. Only you know the truth. That's when it's all about you.
Yes, Peter, you hit him with a grand slam to really capture the essence of who you are. And thank you, Peter Marcus. Where could people find you?
Well, the easy way to find me, generally on social media, is certainly through LinkedIn. You can find me, Peter at marcuscoaching.com. You can find me in many areas, I guess. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter.
Can you hear me, Peter?
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, I got cut out. Yeah, he's on Instagram. Peter Marcus. Is it Peter Marcus Coaching?
Yeah. Peter Marcus on Instagram, Peter Marcus on LinkedIn, marcuscoaching.com or Peter at marcuscoaching.com. If you're interested and you want to get on Clubhouse and do a program with us, we've got the great opportunities. We're doing now about 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday on Clubhouse. We start early in the morning. We start at 6 a.m. Then we take a little break, and then we finish about 11 a.m. So, and it's called BusinessLife Global Strategies. We talk business all the time. That's what we do. And we talk to business owners and founders and people who want to build a business. Perhaps people who've got a business that's really having a hard time. We talk the bits and pieces, the nitty gritty. And, text me. Text me direct. My phone number's on my website. You can call me direct, and I'm always available. And I look forward to it. Thank you.
Well, anybody out there who is interested in this, I put my name behind Peter Marcus. He's a phenomenal guy, and he's going to get you to where you need to go. And Peter, I'm looking forward to connecting with you now. We recrossed paths,
Great.
And I'm looking forward to maybe I'll come see you in in Palm Beach, where you're around the wealthy and living the high life. No, but more importantly, I know Rich is inside.
I live in a beach cottage. I'm so lucky. I'm like 3 minutes. 5 minutes. I'm actually, into the ocean. But again, I'm only here for one reason, and that is that every day I can go on my run and take a barefoot sand run at the beach. It's part of my birthday gift from myself from August 29th, 1997.
And I just have to end this note with me and Peter do share the same birthday, August 29th. So That's why we reconnected. Thumbs up. Peter, Marcus, great talking to you guys. Episode number 9. That's incredible. And we're rolling. So
That's a Beatles title, you know, number 9, number 9, number 9. Wow.
there's the rock and roll for you. There's the energy. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning in. Subscribe, like, do all this stuff for social media, and keep on tuning in.